Now we want to give you a little bit of a break, but also an opportunity to do some reflecting and potentially sharing. And so if you scan the QR code, it will take you to a Padlet. And we've already started this activity. We want you to share what words come to mind when you think about your well-being. While we all try to prioritize our students' well-being, if we don't prioritize our own, we can't support our students. And I think as educators, we really have to model that with our students and have open conversations around well-being with them. So this is our opportunity to start that conversation. It's right here. There it is. Back. We're back. Oh, the QR code is kind of like there it is. Right. And I think you can post anonymously. You don't have to write your name. You wrote our names. You don't have to write your name. Just post the words that come to mind when you think about your well-being.
Do you want me to read the ones that are coming up? I have it on my phone.
Oh yeah, it should be.
Another example I can give you so last year there was a research project on kids.
You can see each other's too.
So, care and respect and good health, being happy, family time, recreational activities, hobbies, self-care, time to read and engage in art, reading, peace of mind, good health, lots of friends and fun, food, not feeling neglected, to be understood, to be appreciated, to be able to successfully reach out and transform lives. Those are great responses. Spending time to reflect on the day, traveling, balancing family and work life, talking with family members, chit-chatting virtually or directly.
I request you to just hold mic because you explained about meaning. So I think I'm in the conversation, if that's all right. You shared examples of the different sectors. Could you, for people who come from other international universities and are very keen to tie up with India or any other country for that matter, share maybe one odd example successful institution to institution partnership that you've led or you've been engaged in with this. It's just to go on line later. It doesn't need to be identical because we're talking about innovation. Get some ideas for people who are very new to this field.
Inside to see what works for me. How do I solve? How am I able to show up and experience joy? And again, that's very personal. And so this helped me guide my well-being journey. And it's based on my values. So values are health, family, and work. And what I try to do is to find balance. I find ways to ensure that I'm getting these in my life on a daily basis. I have protocols in place to ensure that my cup is being filled when it comes to my health, my family, and work. And I've strategically placed them in this order because, and it's taking care of my health first. So that's the first thing I do every morning is find ways to take care of whether it's my physical health or my mental health. That's the first. Because I can be a healthy husband, a healthy father to my son, and take care of my family. So if my health's not there, I can't support my family. Right? So that's why I prioritize my health over my family. Right? And then finally work. Right? If my health is well, my family's taken care of, that's how I can show up and be fully present to support my students and my colleagues at work. So that's the order. And I'll be honest with you, this is what I strive to accomplish, and it hasn't always been in this order. There have been times where work is prioritized and family life suffers.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ashur. Just for everybody else, I'm going to just ask a couple of questions, leave some time for all of you, but later as well in the day or in the next 2 days, if you have any questions and you want to engage with the lovely panel or anybody else, just scan your QR code, obviously with permission. Please don't get somebody, and you will get their contact information. So their names and their email addresses, and you can reach out to them.
Have had pressure to deliver on numbers.
All right. So we've spoken about the need of partnerships, meaningful partnerships, having those partnerships, and there's agreement that we must have partnerships. That's the essence what we've got. And we thank you for agreeing and just saying that it's one of those events that we'd like to do and we'll engage and we'll network. I wouldn't say a lot of times, but a few times we've noticed that right on top where you sat and so the other leaders, there was that agreement and saying that there is partnership.
Especially because
we'd also be keen to know what happens beyond, because every person who wants to enter, with all due respect, or whether it's a faculty member or a research associate or student or anybody or a head of a department, will not always have access right on the top. They're going to do a peer-to-peer conversation. So I'd love to know from you, beyond the top leadership, how can partnerships be sustained? So what in your experience working in the sector is the dissection of how others would engage in, because there was a commitment, and it's important for them to be practical as well. The efficiency and the effectiveness is equally important.
On Friday at 5 o'clock, I'm going to be done. There's nothing that's an emergency in admissions on a weekend that cannot wait until Monday. But I know, again, it's always that pressure that we're being asked to do more and more, or we're asked to respond to families as quickly as possible. So you have to really be cognizant and think of where is that line for you. Does it mean at a certain hour every evening that you are done and you are not picking up a device until 8 o'clock the next morning? Having to be incredibly cognizant of it. Mental health breaks, in reminding myself again that these are healthy. One thing I've noticed in the last 2 years especially is as we're reading applications, and especially as students are telling us about hard things that they're going through, that actually takes a mental toll on us as well. And so reminding myself that it's okay if I spend an hour reading and then take a 15-minute break, or read for 2 hours and take a 15-minute break. That we also need to have that mental health separation so we can make sure we're making the best decisions as we're reading applications. This also really comes back to also being on the road, because many of us, of course, I see many colleagues who've come here from the U.S. today or for this week. This is challenging to be on the road. I know if you're friends with us on Facebook, you see these great pictures, great food, it looks like you're having fun. That's actually not the reality of our day-to-day. We're usually up and out of the hotel by 7 a.m., sitting in traffic, 3, 4, sometimes 5 school visits in a day, sit in traffic again to get back to the hotel. Then once we get back to the hotel in the U.S. or the UK, everybody's waking up and we're getting all of the emails. So then we spend the next 4 or 5 hours trying to stay up to date on our emails. And then again, we find ourselves maybe getting 5 hours of sleep. Usually ordering room service or grabbing a quick bite to eat in the lounge of the Marriott, since most of us are Marriott people. And this is also not sustainable and not healthy in terms of our both physical and mental health. So again, I have told myself that at least one night a week during traveling, which I guess is not even really great when I say that out loud, I'm not going to do emails. I find a Netflix series that I'm really excited to watch. I don't go out, and I really just kind of tune out the world and take that break for myself. And then also, as you're traveling, especially if you're in charge of your own schedule, really trying to figure out, is visiting 5 schools in a day really the best use of our time and our students' time as we meet with them? And thinking through where and how are we going to make the best impact with students? Because at the end of the day, it's all about the ROI, right? We have to make sure we're using our time wisely so we enroll students. So for you and your institution,
I hear you.
Is it really packing in as many schools in a day, or is it spending more time at one school and building better relationships with those students and maybe not having such a hectic day? So sometimes I know in the summer, again, we like to say, summer's our downtime, and it never actually is our downtime. But really thinking through, as your institution, how are you going to make the best impact as you travel? Isa, how about for you?
If you're wondering if that's a video of me,
it is.
There's actually probably a VHS tape circa 1990 of me doing this for my grandmother and sending it to her, as you can see. I think Sammy did a really good job
Sure.
about.
So what I wanted to add to that is, partnership, and I'm talking largely about universities, but even could be schools. I think there need to be two or three different people involved in the partnership. It's not just the leadership. It has to be someone in the faculty, in the teaching space, or even a student who has to be interested in that partnership in a deeper way. I think the policy, the people who lead the partnership ideas, these are people who set up the air cover for you. They create the agreement is to say, okay, we will partner, but then somebody needs to put their hand up and say, okay, we are going to own this partnership. And you need these owners at a different level than the leadership. The leadership is probably, looking at a multiple objectives, and within that, if there's a person who within the organization who says, I want to own this partnership up and really take it towards a certain purpose, it can happen. And a lot of times, when we talk about universities and partnership, universities usually are partnering with universities, or they're partnering with governments. Rarely are universities partnering with schools. I think this is a new space that can be opened. I know a lot of schools in India who actually travel to universities abroad, but they're often looking at how these universities will be for our students, and they're always looking for maybe just to find out more about the universities, but they're not looking at how schools can actually partner with universities. That's another space that can be looked at, because schools have a local a local footprint, and maybe they can help a university who wants to come and do research or wants to come and do some field work. They can actually help them. So I think it needs to happen at 2-3 levels, otherwise it doesn't sustain usually.
So I'd like to pull us back to about 2000.
And I take self-work really, really important, to the point where when we all met a couple of weeks ago in the evening, all I had was my phone. And the question was,
And
where's your laptop?
so,
I'm like, I don't
given
know.
the fact that I think most people would agree.
Again,
the US
going back, there
is
is no emergency that cannot be dealt with the next day,
We
right?
have an election.
And then at home,
We're very nervous about that.
at least once a week, I'll have a solo dance party by myself. You know that idea, dance like no one is watching? I normally can do that the best when no one's actually watching. So just keeping in mind of what actually works for you and balancing that off with work-life balance.
And we think the solution
Thank
will
you.
come from someone maybe that we haven't found yet. Or
All right, so
someone
these
we
are,
haven't discovered.
I think when, we think of well-being, it's sometimes overcomplicated, but it's really simple. It's a real simple,
Talked about research, allows us to spread out more with students.
it involves increasing
It
social
also
connectedness.
helps us to spread out more with
Okay,
faculty.
so making sure you're
So we
connected,
have
you're
a
feeling
minority
connected,
of
whether that's
business
people back
to
home, if you're away from home, whether it's having people, colleagues to connect with, as Isa shared.
So the more we can have those levels of exchange.
Moving your body.
and also
Some form
what
of
we
movement,
consider, a
we know is helpful.
So there's huge.
We know how it helps students struggling with anxiety, students with depression, how important movement is throughout the day. Finding time and space to move.
And
how do we integrate that into our day somehow, right? Whether that's taking a walk maybe at lunch, right? Taking those breaks as needed.
Or, the next math work, because we know that. that's
Awareness on how
the
you're feeling,
only way that we can reach
right?
the
Checking in with
knowledge
yourself
of the student.
to really kind of start to figure out, okay, how am I feeling today? And then labeling that emotion, labeling that feeling. If you can't name it, you can't tame it.
And one thing that I
Take care of
would
yourself.
just
So really checking yourself, okay, how am I feeling? And then thinking of that word that best describes how you're feeling in that moment, acknowledging that feeling, right?
Because we had seen a large birth rate.
and if you
growth,
can't take care of yourself in that moment, just acknowledging that,
a lot of those
is
are
helpful.
community colleges because we
and then also
are very
letting it
committed
pass,
to
knowing that
students
it's temporary and
entering
not
the
going to be something you
educational
feel
system at the place that makes the most sense for
after that
them.
moment.
And I think one of the things we struggle with when we are
Learning new things and skills, I think this is really important. We did a check-in in our team, as part of the counseling leadership team, and one of the questions in the check-in was, what are you doing outside of school? What outside of work? What are you learning outside? What skills are you learning? And very few people actually, in our group, a lot of us were workaholics, and we really struggled with this. And everything revolved around work. And so there wasn't anybody really doing anything else outside of work or learning a new skill that was not connected to their work. Okay, and that's really important. Thinking about new skills that we can be actively learning.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Bert, for adding to that perspective. It's amazing to see how you look, what is the vision that you have of that 4,000, saying it's a smaller number. But I couldn't agree with you when you speak about the 50 institutions, because I think we have a similar thing in India. Everyone knows about the institutions of eminence, the IITs, IIMs, and even today we've only touched on those. Of course, we've got parts, so we're speaking about Ahmedabad University, and it's a highly ranked one, but it just comes very naturally, and it's not with any disrespect, but it's just easier to give such examples. But there is so much talent in every other part of India.
We're not just talking about it; we're also doing that reflection and taking the steps to kind of make those thoughts or ideas actionable.
Yeah, every Indian institution I spoke with in the last 45 days were just so at it to get their rankings and their NIRF, and they said for everything we do, every event, we need to put it down. So I hear you, that as much as we say that we're away from them, they're equally important, and that decision-making time when students are looking at what institution, this does come in some way, shape or form, whether it's for teaching excellence, whether it's for research, whether it's for any of those things. But I won't go on that path right now. I don't think that's appropriate.
Before moving to India,
we also spoke about the population in India and the number of students who need to go abroad, and because that's also a push mechanism. A few years back, there was a pull mechanism where international universities attracted bright Indian students, but today we don't have those many institutions. So there is also a small number. It's not small. It's about, I think, 11 lakh is what I read last. Students who went for outward mobility, so outside India, but into India we get very few. We get about 47 or 48,000 students. Part because you work in the enrollment space, so you obviously interact a lot with schools, but also with higher education who want to come and do a lot of partnership work. I'm sure that at the university, specifically because you're looking at admissions, you lead that practice. There are some strategies that you use for enhancing all the things we love to talk about, and I think we really work towards that. That is access, accessibility, quality, engagement, all of those things. So is there something specific that you run at the institute, or is there any guidance for the audience when Indian institutions are looking at those kind of partnerships? That would be helpful.
I think it's a very difficult question, because I think partnerships are not really, maybe they are, at a broader level you can have conversations, but I think partnerships are really about finding that one meaningful relationship, and it means when we are doing enrollment, we may have thousands of students who apply to the university, but we screen through them, we take a lot of time to understand each profile, and we try to say, okay, who will fit here in the university. I think partnerships are exactly like that. You have to work very hard, it takes very long, and I think it's easier to say, okay, let's sign an agreement, but it's very difficult to say, okay, let's do 10 visits, talk to people, understand each other, take the time to figure out what you want to partner in, and build it slowly. For example, he spoke about Professor Sood. When I was working at USC a few years back before Shishir, that's when this conversation began, saying that, Professor Sood was, I had some conversations with him, and he was doing work on economics, and he wanted to look at, partnerships in India. And we talked to a few people. So it didn't work out at that point of time, but it's the sustaining of some of these things that makes it work. And I think, a lot of times when in India or even other countries, I think the idea is that, we're running after these rankings, and therefore the idea is how quickly can we do partnerships, how many can we show that we have. And I think that instead of that route, if we can keep those rankings aside for a while and say, how do you build a long-term relationship, something like ISC and USC has done. It's a partnership that's been there for the last 15 years. So can you really build a long-term partnership and not focus so much on the rankings or what you're going to get out of it? Do it for the right reasons and sustain with that partnership, and it will go through phases. So when you do that, in the long run, then you can find that meaningful exchange that makes not just a good partnership, but then your students will find meaning in it, your faculty will find meaning in it, your leadership will find meaning in it, and that then can add to your rankings as well.
Informed in how we support our students, but this is a great tool or framework that I use to work
The proposal and the
students
way.
who are experiencing
If you're only
challenges,
focused on the
so they can
proposal
also see the light
and the
and see
wedding,
their growth.
It's not going to be a
And
good
so I
marriage.
challenge
If
them
you are focused on the long-term
as they're struggling
health of
to
both
identify
parties
maybe
in the partnership,
personal
and you
strength
both
that
are
they
willing
found
to work
when they
at
were
it, it'll be a
able to
wonderful
overcome
marriage.
maybe an
But
obstacle.
that really helps shape what
Um,
you're trying to do, so that it's mutually.
For a lot of us, I mean, I know for myself,
Yeah, sure.
2020.
I want to add to that marriage thing. Also what's important is don't go searching after everyone.
Yes, that's good.
Look for the few people you want to have the
That to me was a
partnership
real
with,
spiritual
because sometimes we see people are just doing they want 50 partnerships. It doesn't work
I
that way.
reconnected in that moment
not
with
about the stick.
spirituality or a spiritual side of me that I was there, but I wasn't actively engaging. And in order to accept the situation, but also experience some form of closure. We know that with challenges, they present also opportunities, right, for growth.
मैंने
And having students who have yourself see those opportunities emerge from challenging times and be able to kind of map those out. Again, finding the personal strength, developing close relationships, right? I think during that time or after that, a lot more people have seemed to be a lot more closely connected to family back home, for example, if you're traveling, right? Really spending or making that
Check
time
on.
in your weekly
Check.
schedule to connect with mom, dad, brother, siblings, best friends, finding that time. And then, of course, the greater appreciation for life and gratitude.
इमोनिटी
This
खाली
would
है
be a
क्या?
really great framework when you're
उसको
thinking about
चाहिए, इसको तो ले ही नहीं
your
सकते।
challenges.
है?
kind of
नहीं मेरे को नहीं चाहिए।
identify
अच्छा वैसे
growth,
कुछ मेरे को और कुछ चेक करना है इसको। कर लूँ?
because it can be really
लगा
difficult,
दूँगा इसको। ऑन कहाँ से है ये?
right? When you're experiencing
तो वही
hardship,
बताएगा वो
not in a good
वो आता ही
headspace.
है क्या
Look
कर
at
रखा है
this and you can see, okay, what are some of the things?
देखना और पुट क्या आ रही है
opportunities,
दोनों
How am
ऑफ
I
कर
showing
दो।
personal strength? What have I done to show
पावर कहाँ है?
situation?
इसमें से तो नहीं है। एक मिनट आ रहा है ना वो आ रहा है।
We're gonna get another session. So you have
किसी और हॉल की आवाज आ गई फिर।
Okay. So this could be a great tool talking about post-traumatic growth. Just to wrap up, we won't have time to get into our circle that we
इसको भी पता चल गया।
time and technical
इसको भी पता चल गया।
challenges, but that's okay. We got the speaker at 10 o'clock, till 10 o'clock.
Yes.
So you'll have some time to mingle before we get to the next spot. But before we go, it's really important to, I think, this, we're all here together, the counselors here, there's how we can really collaborate and partner to like destigmatize mental health.
ये तो बातें
I think it's really important.
पाँच में ये है।
And I'm really proud of a student because last year I worked with an admissions rep and I said, listen, you're talking about tests and assessment, you're talking about the services you offer, but you have not mentioned the counseling services for students or the mental health services for students. I think it's really important you do that. That will really help destigmatize mental health. Students accessing mental health, or even asking questions.
Thank you,
about it.
Shishir. Yeah, sure.
So that admissions rep.
Shishir talked about how many students are coming to India. Exchange programs are a good opportunity to start that process. But I'll give you a very interesting thing. Ahmedabad University now has 6 study abroad partners. And in those 6, we've had about 40-50 students who've gone abroad, but only one student has come to India. And I was talking to a few universities in the US, and I was asking them, why to people who are running the global programs, saying why is it that students are not coming to places like India? And they said, oh, they only want to go to Europe. They don't want to come to other countries. Now this is something that I've been talking to them, saying why don't you start by the person first coming to India, exploring universities here and actually figuring out is it worth for a student to come to India. Only if they do that with a commitment will that change over a period of time. And the one student who came, of course, had a great time and he's been writing about it, but it takes a long time for this to start changing. So I think there's a lot more commitment required even by universities abroad to start finding those universities in India where their
Last
students
Saturday
could
was
come.
an SAT test day.
Yes.
There
That just
testing
brings me to the
school.
point that
So we
the
actually
panelists were
came
talking
after
about.
the
It's not
exam
only
for
important that we're talking about
We did a session
students,
called
but we're also
Students
saying
for
students are a
SAT
part of the
Now What?
partnership. This is a
It
classic
started with a
example
conversation with the
where
students and
actually the
parents
student is
that
probably leading
you
that
don't score well,
partnership,
it
is
doesn't
leading
matter.
about
Because
being
there's
the
so
brand
many
ambassador.
universities that are test options
Now,
and test
it wouldn't be
blind.
fair to
But that
end
school
a
got
panel
to the US
discussion
as
without
well.
talking a little bit about
Universities that don't
credit
even care
transfer,
about
because
the
that's one of the
SAT.
few questions
You
I
are
get
still going to
asked
have
very, very
test
often from schools.
options. So,
And Todd, because
I
you're
mean,
in the enrollment
great day,
services and you
even
lead
if a
that
great score
practice,
for
would you tell us a little
really
bit
is
about
okay. And kind of
how
take that
you
pressure
work
off
with the
for
credit transfer
their faces as
system
soon as they
at
walked in,
Drexel
grabbed
or
a
any
bite
other,
to
because
eat,
you work with so
and
many
said that there was, oh my
universities?
gosh, I did not do well. I say, it's okay. You don't have to do well. There's still options.
Yeah, it was actually really therapeutic. It was like a little mini therapy session because students had finished their SAT. The math apparently was really challenging this round last Saturday. And so there were students who were like very pale, struggling, explain to their parents why they may not done so well, right? And then our session was starting around 11. But we kind of eased into the session. We took the break with food. We talked openly about SAT. There's opportunities to take it again, but also the reality in terms of test optional universities that don't necessarily look at the SAT, and kind of ease into the session, and you can see that students started to really find their voice again and engage. Yeah.
We're not imposing what we think on them. They are helping us understand. And I would be very cautious of an institution that comes in and prescribes every single thing, because it means that they haven't done their due diligence to really look at the local ecosystem and what's happening. And one of the things that we talk a lot about is making sure that when students are coming into these pathway programs, that they're not only getting the education they need to be successful beyond, but we want to make sure that they're coming in with as little disruption as possible. And so by having local experts help us map those courses and that curriculum, we're sure that they have the prerequisites. So if we're talking about, an engineering manufacturing degree, or we're talking about, one of our computer science degrees, or one of our business degrees, we have a huge program for accounting.
This is
It's
why
very
I try to
important
look
that
at
our
that as much as
accountants are good
possible.
at math. So we have to make sure that they have the prerequisites there. But the easiest and the most cost-effective way is to have somebody.
And I've also been very careful to really think about my wording around
Thank you.
this
I
and
love
say,
the point
are
that
not
you need
being
local
rejected.
experts, because I couldn't
Your
agree more with you.
application.
I could be talking here for the
You are
rest of
not
the day,
your
but I do
application.
know
Your application
that we
does show
have an
who
opening to
you
attend. But
are,
just before we go,
but it's
two of the panelists out of
literally
four
a
have said I asked difficult
It is not
questions, but I'm
you.
sure you'll ask better questions. I'd
getting
like to
students to
open it up to the room if any of
to
you have
draw that
questions.
separation. I know one conversation that we had as well this weekend was reminding families, especially if they're applying to highly selective or highly rejected
Good morning, everyone.
institutions,
Sorry for
just
being
by
late,
sheer
although I was
data
very keen
and
to attend
looking at
this
the number
session.
of applications
We
you're
talked
getting,
about
it's a
sustainability
lottery
in the
if you get
agreements
in. It
as I
really
was
has
listening
nothing
to.
to do with you. It's
My issue
really
here
just
with my experience is
your lottery
that
at this
generally
point.
universities
But also
give
reminding
agreements for
families
1
that
or 2
we're literally
years
talking
only.
about 1% of universities.
Why not these
There's
agreements are
99%
perpetual in nature,
of other
wherein you can
institutions in
terminate the
world
contract by giving
that
30 days
are
or
excited
maybe
to have
60
you on
days
their
notice?
campus,
Because in this case,
welcoming,
there is always a
supportive, to
sword
help you with that
on the
transition.
apple
So
or
just because
apple
they're
on the
not
sword.
ranked in the top
So
20
things get
doesn't
disturbed.
mean that they're
That
not
is
the
my
best
submission here.
institution for you.
I don't disagree with that. So we typically start with the year.
The last year I was there, we tried out reverse admission Concourse Global, and we found that to take such a lens of pressure, like that immediate getting offers, being like, okay, maybe it's not my first, second, fifth choice. but someone's telling me I have a home next year. And that just, the entire senior class, it just was a,
when it comes to just about implements that go into the drawer, just to make sure that you're not even thinking about it.
and say there were 2 out of the entire senior class that were
Those who are
treated
actually
through their
operational, and those who are not
but
operational. Those who are not operational, they are community college.
Yeah.
Those who
And
are
if
operational,
you're at a school that has Maya Learning, Maya's also doing this now with Maya Offers. There's an organization called Beto that does something similar where it literally allows universities to find the students that they're looking for and reach out and say, like, I want you on my campus. And it, again, also relieves kind of a little bit that pressure from students.
Thank you very much. That was an insightful panel discussion. I must say I got attracted here by the Red Sea, Blue Ocean strategy, and I was waiting for that to come up, so probably I'm going to ask you a strategic question. So you talked of 2 things which I wanted to touch upon and get your expert views on. One was this negative reciprocity circle that exists for ratings, and then students applying to 50 universities, and it's a waste of money and energy, and it just skews the whole cycle. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you break that cycle? And the other one really is about, we talked of partnerships, and strategically, what are the elements that make a good partnership? And what should one look for? I think that will enlighten us on, just sort of a closure for the panel. Thank you.
So I can maybe help answer some of those parts. In terms of how we're supporting teachers, so all of the lower level challenges, we call them tier 1 challenges, we are now upskilling our teachers to be able to respond to those challenges. So they go through an annual training, safeguarding training, where they get the skills to be able to respond to some of the lower level challenges. And also identify higher level challenges and know when to refer to counseling support or other supports.
So one thing I would say about
In terms of social media use, and this is changing as we speak, our school is now experimenting with, we have spaces where there's no phones allowed. We still allow phones for high school students to bring their phones to school. I know other schools, International of Panama recently completely banned. So you come in, there's a place to check in your phone, you can pick it back up again. And so everyone's kind of experimenting because a lot of that data we shared from that 2011 to 2021, there's new research suggesting that we kind of knew there was a relation between social media and smartphones and some of the mental health challenges we're seeing. But now there's new data that says that no, it's actually causing increase in anxiety, mental health, suicide ideation, etc. So there's a really great book that I'm reading right now called The Anxious Generation that really does a deep dive in terms of how social media is impacting mental health and how we as parents, as educators, can respond. So that's a really great book. It's called The Anxious Generation. Did you want to talk about I think you asked about higher education as well, colleges?
What specific? It was hard for me to hear with the fans.
I think it was about higher education, how they're...
Okay.
Yeah.
It gets me where I
Yeah.
need to go. I think it's simple. It does everybody, and that's what we need students to
Sure.
understand. It's not chasing the reverses and being disappointed when they don't achieve that. It's about going towards something that's going to get them to the next step. And so helping
Yeah.
students.
So, yes.
Thank you.
So really, first of all, it's not only not just about change in the level of knowledge. It is also about trying to transition yourself of their family culture as well as their outlook we used to come from,
and
and commerce and arts, oh my god, if you think at that time, 20 years back, people used to think that, sorry, no offense meant, but that's how we used to be raised. People used to say, I'm not from Delhi, I am from Lucknow and Uttar Pradesh region, and there you go. That's how it used to tell me. If I would have gone to my father and asked him to, hey, I want to do a BCom, he would have thrown me out of home and go and think for yourself. So it's the tradition that we have built in, and we believe in it. We believe to go to a certain institution to give you good career opportunity. You'll be set for life. Indian parents are looking for options that will set their kids for life. This is the story.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm very mindful of time, but I just wanted to say perhaps it's the entire ecosystem that needs to change, and IC3 has a big role to play, I think. Thank you.
Yeah. And laundry.
Something which I see personally when I went there, I was to myself, vegetarian food, veganism is coming up very well now. Every country, every city in the world has something or the other for vegetarian food. So, you need to start, as you asked, what should you do? My point would be that get it done with parents, do a session for them, and we are more than happy as a university to instruct other
Very different thing. They can go on and on. It's not about me. It's just about, because you have such ocean and
what should the parents expect when they are in a foreign, when their kids are in foreign country? So like, as you guys were talking about well-being and mental well-being, some people in the universities are looking as a team and support staff, which helps students not only for mental well-being, but different level students also support system. Something which I recently
very much for being here and very, very grateful to be
it's
sharing
kind of a taboo subject in India. Sexual every university abroad has that support that is low. I have come across students who out and out openly express that how does your university support we could have those support. Because the problem is students in India and even if they belong to that economy, they are not able to speak openly about it. If the schools can start this sensitization, I know the Indian education system, the sex education is still falling as a big taboo. Exactly. Not only that, but even the sexual well-being of in general, not only for LGBT, but for straight people as well. Yeah. Something very important which if you guys, I know it's not part of the curriculum, but if you can start imparting that knowledge to 11th and 12th on your own, you don't have to take approval from CPS.
Yeah. The students in the back will take it. Yeah. Yeah, we're over time. Yeah.
Thank you for participating and thank you for your
Yeah.
being vulnerable and